David, Serena, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Thank you. For everybody, the Slido code is ATOM11 for questions. Look, as we've said many times, the bios are on our digital program so everyone can access them, but I'll give a very brief, again, introduction so that we have context. David, you're a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, pioneer in longevity science, entrepreneur, and author, best-selling author. Your book, Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. Serena, you are a longevity and wellness expert, entrepreneur, investor in wellness, and you treat and advise numerous high-profile clients and companies on longevity, detoxification, lifestyle optimization. I hope I got it all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my first question would be, keeping in touch with you guys, you've been traveling extensively, meeting with all sorts of leaders from government and industry. What patterns are you seeing? What have you learned? What's happening out there?
There's a lot happening. When we started about 25 years ago, aging was not even on the map. It was not even something you talked about in polite company. And I think most of you know, longevity has become one of the hot topics, along with AI. And we travel the world speaking to world leaders, leaders of industry as well, government. And if we were to summarize, so we've been all over, right? Middle East is a hot spot, Singapore, UK actually. And overall, I'd say that the governments that are progressive, in particular the Middle East, they are pushing healthcare very rapidly into the 21st century. We're not there yet, but especially in the US. But in the Middle East, they are so far ahead of the rest of the world in the way they think and the infrastructure. And we've been most impressed with those governments and their initiatives and what they're planning to do as well. For instance, getting the genomes of most of their citizens and having centralized databases and codes for patients so you can look at all their medical records, and even on the phone, the patients can see all their medical records on their phones. So different than here, where one doctor can't even share records with the next doctor because it's a different system. On longevity, just to be more specific, there is increasing talk about declaring aging formally a medical condition. And if you've never heard that before, it might seem shocking because we were raised to think aging was something was natural and therefore acceptable. But increasingly, we are, as scientists, we're discovering that aging has a universal underlying cause in every tissue and underlies most diseases that we get. And if we can slow down aging or even reverse it, those diseases either don't happen or they can be cured. And so these governments are realizing that, and declaring aging a medical condition would totally change the landscape. We could have more innovation and even develop drugs to treat aging itself. And there's also a push globally to do more preventative medicine than reactionary, which is mostly what the 20th century was.
Sorry, David, it changes the landscape because?
Well, there's a few reasons. One is, right now, we've got a few companies that are trying to commercialize products, both pharmaceutical and consumer. And particularly in the drug space, you cannot make a drug that treats aging because there is no recognized condition. It's similar to obesity about 20 years ago, where obesity wasn't considered treatable, but now, of course, it's one of the largest markets in the world. Aging will be the same. We're about 20 years behind as a field, and governments are looking to do that. So it would encourage investment, it would attract talent, and it would allow doctors to immediately treat patients for aging. And there are already some drugs that maybe we can touch on later that show promise in the ability to at least slow down aging that are available right now for doctors to use.
Okay. Yeah. And then, Serena, anytime you want to, please jump in.
Yeah,
David, the same.
I think the only thing that I would just sort of add to sum it up is that, I mean, we really have traveled all over the globe, and the pattern that we're seeing is the awareness at a government level that longevity is not just about wellness anymore. It is economic, it's geopolitical, it is, and governments are getting strategic, because as we look into the future, the strongest nations are going to be the strongest and the wealthiest nations, I think, are going to be the healthiest nations. So that sort of sums up what David said, but I would also say that the pattern that we're noticing being deep in the space and as practitioners and as educators is that innovation is happening much faster than integration. And that's, of course, we're needed in a lot of spaces in a lot of countries, but integration, I think, and collaboration is going to be something that people are going to be seeking a lot more, because we've got AI, we've got these therapies, we've got reprogramming, but how are we integrating it into our communities?
Oh, just one last point, just to put a period at the end of, is there falling off? I might need some technical help here.
Since you can't see, let me try.
Yeah, thank you. All right, how's that? Testing, testing. Did it work or break?
Yeah.
There we go. Good. So the final point that Serena reminded me of is, so what's changed in the last 20 years is 20 years ago we were all freaked out about human overpopulation, and now it's very clear that human population is leveling off or declining in countries like China and Europe, regions like Europe, and there really aren't a lot of solutions to that. The economies of these places by 2050 will start to really suffer for a lack of human capital. And one solution is to replace people, the deficit of people, with robots. Another alternative, or perhaps something we could do in parallel, is to keep existing populations healthier and alive for longer, so that we can actually end up being more productive. One of the biggest economic drains on any country is the elderly, and having productive elderly people that can actually continue to work is what's going to be needed over the next 20, 30 years as human populations level off and start to decline globally.
It's a nice segue to another question, which I've always been thinking, and it's quite a hot topic these days, about the human and tech symbiosis. So meeting in the middle, not robots, not human, but somewhere in the middle. What's your perspective on view on things like Neuralink and other such technologies? Both of you. Yeah.
I'll go first. Well, just since the pandemic, we're seeing a big integration of machines and humans already. How many of you have a wearable on your body? Just raise your hands if you have a wearable on you. Looks like about 20% of the audience, maybe more. So that, maybe more, let's say close to 40%. That's a big deal, right? That wasn't around before the pandemic. And that's just the beginning of what's going to become an increasing trend, that you're monitored constantly by your devices and then eventually by your doctor and AI. And there will be a time in the next 10 years where you won't want to leave home without one of these devices, either implanted or stuck to your skin. Already now the technology exists to predict whether you're going to get a cold or you're going to get Alzheimer's just by having something stuck on your skin. That's just the beginning. I know Serena likes wearables. She's wearing a few of them right now.
I'm wearing 3.
Yeah.
And I would say that, with tech, we use tech strategically. So even though I have 3, it's really about the strategic use of the data and the information. It might seem obsessive that there are 3, but it's not about the obsessive use of technology. It's about using it strategically. So whether it's AI, whether it's robots, whether it's tech, data gives us, and the access to data is what is really going to give us precision health and precision longevity. And so that's being integrated more and more, and there's more wearables and more devices. We've talked about CGMs in the past and how that continuous measuring of our glucose is so key to our health. There are now going to be wearables that you can monitor your glucose levels without having to stick something in your arm and break the skin barrier. It's going to be a wearable similar to one of these, where it's like a watch or a band or a ring. So technology will continue to improve for us that way.
And is this on? Can you turn the mic on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Well, just to add to Serena, is that increasingly the gathering of data is becoming a commodity. So we just had the $100 genome announced last week, which is going to be widely available. So sequencing your genome, collecting this kind of data, these devices can be made pretty cheaply in China. It's not the devices that collect the data that are the real frontier. It's what do you do with that data? And we know of countries that I won't name specifically that have millions of individuals whose genomes have been sequenced. But then what do you do with that? How do you monetize that? How do you use that for the health of the population? And that's the problem, is that we don't have the software infrastructure yet, or even the ability to compare data across borders of countries. And that's still being worked out, and I think that's a real area for investment and opportunity.
Okay. Again, because of the timing, another question that concerns all of this is all great. Longevity solutions are coming out or are about to come out, and we're seeing fantastic research out there. What about access to those solutions? We talked about wearables and so on, which is, it's accessible. But when we look at longevity-specific solutions, democratization of those solutions or giving access to people who cannot afford those solutions, are we going to head that direction? Because it's quite expensive these days to go through this.
Well, it is, and we interact with the top 0.001% of the world typically. Those are the ones who invite us to come and speak with them or take care of them. And you're right, it's not democratized, and it needs to be. That said, in history, all technology starts out for the few. The Wright brothers, it wasn't available. Flight wasn't available for another 50 years, really, for the average person. And so we're going to hopefully not have to wait 50 years for technologies to be available for the whole world. And the good news is, for example, with genomic analysis, that software can be deployed very cheaply for nations in Africa that can help them monetize their genomes. And another example is, Serena mentioned reprogramming, which is a new technology to reverse the age of the body. Right now, that treatment, which is going into humans, having succeeded in monkeys, is next month. First human will be treated with age reversal therapy in March. That will be expensive, and any therapy that involves genetics is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, if you're blind or you've broken your spine or you can't hear, $100,000, $300,000 is actually worth it for the country or the insurance. But it's not widely available. So what we're working on, Serena and I, is bringing the cost of those technologies down. So instead of costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, they could cost $100 or less. And Serena's actually CEO of a company that we have that is working on finding ways to turn that into a cream or a pill that anyone could afford.
And on that note, Serena, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the question. We both feel so strongly about the democratization of the technology, the access, the knowledge, the know-how, and that's why we travel all over the world educating. And I'm just going to reflect back to a comment I made earlier about integration. That is the challenge. How do we make everything equitable, ethical, and sustainable? And I want to just remind everyone that at its core, what we talk about fundamentally that sets the foundation for a healthy lifespan is rooted in sleep, the food that you eat, whether you hydrate, how you regulate your nervous system, and your movement, and all of this is free. So,
It goes back to the basics. And
yeah,
the
that's our baseline. That's our baseline. So it's a reminder that it's not necessarily about optimization. So where are you optimizing from? You have to always set a foundation and a baseline, and it's remembering that that these are highly accessible to everybody. So as long as they're either educated or re-educated or reminded about it. Are there tools and devices that can help us enhance those very fundamental practices? Of course. But movement, running costs nothing, meditation costs nothing, and sleeping, with the sun up and down also costs nothing.
Yeah, what we're finding is the combination of healthy lifestyle plus the new technologies gives you the best bang for the buck.
The balance.
And you want to do both. And in fact, if you don't have access to technologies that are coming online yet, the best thing is to stay healthy until they arrive.
Yeah.
So our advice is don't die anytime soon, because really big things are coming.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm working.
And
on
we
that,
are in
yeah.
the process of making something very accessible to consumers.
What about, so we're talking about consumers, and both of you have been in this field for a while. You've had your finger or your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the field. What's the public perception of longevity? How has that changed over time? Naturally and historically, human beings have had panic every time there's been a technological innovation, whether it's the bicycle, the airplane, or the train. And is this a similar situation, or this is too dear of an offer to say and panic over it?
You can go.
I think it's changed radically. 20 years ago, it was embarrassing to say that you cared about aging. It felt like you were being selfish. But I think, thanks in part to books like mine, and including mine, there's been a change in that. You see now in the younger generation, the young people are, instead of getting drunk, they're talking about their heart rate variability and boasting how healthy they are and how little alcohol they drink. And the use of alcohol, you can see, is plummeting. So as those individuals get older, we're going to increasingly see that the world is very interested in living healthy, living the best life you can, and using technology to extend lifespan. And it's no longer considered a selfish pursuit. And it does benefit the planet economically, socially, and it's also, I would say, something you should strive for, if not for the benefit of yourself, but for the benefit of your own family. You don't want to be a burden on your children and your grandchildren by getting cancer early or Alzheimer's early if you didn't have to.
Well, and there's a shift in, I think, public perception of how we look at and define longevity. It used to be much more of a vanity thing. We use words like anti-aging, right? It seemed to be much more of a physical thing. And there's a shift now where longevity is really about quality. It's really about vitality, how we live and what we can do with that kind of like vital health span. And in my, I've had a practice for over 25 years. Longevity now is sort of seen as the new luxury. It's not as much about fast cars or handbags and boats. It's about how are you going to spend your holiday? What wellness or longevity trip or journey are you going to do? It's really become a luxury in a way, and that's talking about where it's not democratized, but people are looking at it differently. So we see changes in obviously the travel industry, real estate industry, how people are spending money. David was talking about how kids aren't spending money on alcohol anymore. And these are kids in their 20s. And what were you doing in your 20s when you're on holiday, right? Like, it's a very different perception, and there's a different value that's placed on it now. It's not superficial.
And in terms of, we have 1 minute left. You've been working in age reversal and for a while. What's the response of the regulators regulating age reversal? How does that work?
Right. If you've never heard of age reversal, essentially we've discovered that the body has software, and aging is due to a corruption of that software in what's called the epigenome, the gene regulators. And we've actually discovered that there's a reset switch in cells that you can reset the age of the body, and it's working to cure a variety of diseases, including blindness, like glaucoma. Works in monkeys, and we'll see if it works in people. So that's the basis of it. When we met with the FDA at Life Biosciences, which is the company that's leading the innovation, though we have competitors like Jeff Bezos and Sam Altman, Yuri Milner and others, the FDA was extremely excited. I would have thought that they'd be dismissing of our technology. But normally the FDA doesn't even meet with you if you ask them a question. They send you a letter. Not only did they grant us a Zoom call, they showed up with 18 people, and it was very constructive. They were excited, and they actually suggested ways that we could do the trial cheaper, faster, better. Mm-hmm. And so I was shocked because I'd never had such a positive experience with the FDA before.
Okay, brilliant. I'm so sorry. I want to dig deeper into these things, but we're done.
And they granted us permission to go into patients as soon as we can, starting in January. So we're about to start the first trials in 3 sites around the US to treat glaucoma and another eye condition literally in about a week from now.
Okay. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, so cross your fingers that that works, because if it works in the eye, we think it can work in many other places in the body, the brain, the heart, the kidney, the skin, and maybe one day, whole body rejuvenation.
It's a great way to also preempt and stay ahead of the game.
Stay alive, yeah.
Stay alive,
Yes.
yeah, that's it. Serena, any last words?
No, that's it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody.